The value here is that Uniswap as a value provider should exist regardless of whether you have a wallet or you don't, right? It should just be a way for you to convert thing A to thing B in an extremely market efficient way, right? Or some real world asset providers that allow you to buy T-bills, that allow you to buy energy related things, that allow you to buy real estate, should just allow you to do that and leverage crypto rails. But you should not necessarily, you the end user, should not necessarily need to know about any of this complexity, just like no one expects you to go to Amazon and know what OAuth as technology is. They just expect you to be able to click login and have things work.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Itai Turbahn, co-founder and CEO at Dynamic. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting builders and founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Itai at Dynamic. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Itai Turbahn, co-founder and CEO at Dynamic. Itai, how are you doing today? What's up?
I'm doing great. How's life?
Life's okay. I'm glad we're chatting today. It's going to be a good conversation. So yeah, I'm grateful for your time coming on. So, here to start, maybe I'd love to hear maybe two dimensions of your story. Maybe first, just kind of professional journey, kind of what have you been up to? And then second, there's always kind of that interesting sort of parallel journey of how did you get into crypto? How did this world sort of jump out at you as something that was worth your kind of professional time and professional ambition?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me tackle the first, and then I'll go into kind of the world of crypto. But yeah, so professional journey wise, so both myself and my co-founder Yoni, we grew up in Israel. Born and raised, served in the Israeli Defense Forces, Army Intelligence, and then we actually met at MIT. So we both did our undergrads at MIT together. There are like two Israeli undergrads at MIT every year, so we had to be friends. It wasn't really a choice. And we've known each other for 17 years at this point, or 18 years. So we've known each other for a very, very, very long time. We've been longtime friends for more than I can remember, maybe too long, I would say, but we've known each other for a while. And after graduation, we continued kind of always hanging out and always thinking about startup ideas. So Yoni on his side went more on the engineering track. So he did a master's in computer science as well. He worked at Google, at Gilt Group, at even Financial as a VP engineering and so on. On my end, I mostly stayed on the kind of product businessy track. So worked at IBM Research, worked as a consultant at BCG, did my MBA at Harvard, had a startup company called Villy, which was travel tech. And throughout all of this, we kind of, kept jamming, and I'll come back to the crypto question in a second, but we kept jamming on kind of startup ideas. We actually applied unsuccessfully to a Y Combinator, I think in like 2012 at one point, so a very long time ago. And we continue jamming, but if you look back to our history and look back to our kind of text messages, I would argue that probably 75% of them were crypto related. So we've been passionate about this space for probably 9 or 10 years. I think we bought our first Bitcoin in 2012, 2013. And for us, that was kind of a critical component of our conversations. And so we continued kind of working on different things. We actually got to a chance to work together on the engineering side, on the software engineering side at Jewel Labs. And then we worked at Cometeer, which was a coffee company, for a little bit, which I highly recommend for anyone listening to this podcast. I might be biased, but check it out. But at that point, we said, look, we really want to start a company together. We wanted to start one for a while. And it became very, very clear to us that the thing we're passionate about, and we have been passionate about for a very long time, is crypto. So it was a no-brainer to start a company there. And I'll pause here for a second, but essentially that's kind of our journey plus how we got into crypto. We can dive into either or dive into the crypto side as well.
Love it. Yeah, that's perfect explanation. So let's talk about what Dynamic is as kind of the culmination of all of this sort of thinking together with Yoni. So maybe tell us a little bit about what Dynamic does and really what your team seeks to enable with what you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'll tie it into what I just talked about, which is kind of getting into crypto, right? So we've been passionate about crypto for a while. And over the last couple of years, our passion is kind of increased, right? It was very clear to us that is going to be the way that financial infrastructure globally going forward. It was very clear to us that over time, an open infrastructure is going to win over kind of a closed, slow moving infrastructure for financial transactions. And as, NFTs came to be, as things of that sort came to be, it was very clear to us that it wasn't just financial infrastructure, it's also identity infrastructure, and it's also everything on top of that. So communication infrastructure, etc. So the concept of kind of shared rail was really important to us. And that kind of was the root for Dynamic. It was very clear to us that the way in which you're going to interact with the world in 5 years and 10 years is not just going to be kind of basic email login and account creation. It's going to be wallet-based interactions. They enable kind of multiplayer mode between applications. They let you transfer money very quickly. They let every app essentially become a Venmo in a way. And so it was very clear to us that to enable those use cases, you need kind of a Web3 first authentication company. A little bit like an Auth0 enabled a bunch of use cases in Web2 by abstracting away the entire kind of user management side of something you have to rebuild from the ground up for every company. We thought, look, there needs to be a company in Web3 that abstracts away that authentication and wallet management complexity for users, right? And that's where Dynamic comes in. So the goal for Dynamic was essentially to be your all-in-one kind of Web3 authentication company. And we started around December 2021. We raised a seed from A16Z and founders as A16Z and First Round Capital. And we've been going since then.
Love it. Okay, perfect. So I'm curious, you talked about sort of from a high level, like obviously what you're working on and what some of the initial thinking was. I think I'm curious about conviction, especially as you're looking out kind of across the landscape of Web3 last year and the year prior, as you guys are evaluating potential problem spaces, right? What was it about this particular problem that felt like you had enough conviction that this would be worth sort of the investment you knew that it was going to take to really tackle?
Yeah, it actually, the conviction came pretty quickly in the sense that all you needed to do to know that there's a problem in the way current authentication in Web3, ignoring embedded wallets and kind of bringing in more folks into Web3, just within Web3, all you needed to do is click on any connect wallet button or any mint in 2021 and 2022. Yep. If you've experienced that once, you knew there is a problem in kind of how that experience works. It was broken. It worked 50% of the time. It worked with a subset of wallets. It was unclear what the difference between a connect and authenticate was. It was super confusing. Each wallet had a different experience around it. And all of a sudden, kind of there was an influx of wallets, influx of embedded wallets. It was kind of a mess, right? So the observation for us was that, look, 100% of folks in this industry are facing this. And if you're a big company like OpenSea and Uniswap, you might have resources to tackle this internally. But everyone else has to reinvent this and build this from the ground up. And we obviously weren't the only ones that noticed this, right? So during that time, you would also see great libraries like RainbowKit or ConnectKit come up that tackle kind of big subsets of this problem as well from their perspective to abstract this away. So the problem, it was a combination of really two things. A combination of like, look, this problem top down will exist in a very similar way to how it exists in Web 2 and how it exists so that everyone in Web 2 uses an authentication provider, but it will actually exist even more in a more painful way in Web 3 because it's a fast moving space. Standards are still being created. Everyone's facing kind of a double challenge of handling their existing Web 3 users while trying to kind of increase their funnel and bring in folks that don't care about crypto to use their service. And so it was very clear to us that was an extremely painful pain point for folks over the last 2 years. It still exists as a pain point, but now you see companies like Dynamic come up and start to abstract that away with an actual SaaS service.
Makes sense. Okay, Cool. So I'm always curious, especially at this point in the conversation, like really like what possibilities or downstream effects of dynamic succeeding get you most excited these days? And has that changed from the beginning?
Yeah. So when we talk about dynamic internally, we come back to a single point, which is can we enable experiences that could not have existed beforehand? Dynamic succeeding inherently means that folks are able to build companies and experiences that weren't possible before. So, as a good example, if we do our job correctly, you should be able to spin up a Venmo equivalent product or essentially the based on crypto and based on crypto rails and works globally within minutes, right? Because we allow the abstraction of if you have a third party wallet, if you don't have one, create one with embedded wallets and passkeys and account abstraction. But that is a type of business that was extremely difficult to build before, but now can potentially exist, right? There are types of businesses within real world assets. There are types of businesses within, social fi that or DeFi that could not exist, or the hurdle for quote unquote normies to access those services was so high that they could not get their value proposition across. If Dynamic succeeds, and our fundamental goal is to allow these companies to focus on the actual innovation and abstract away the entire onboarding process. And we're successful if more of these companies are able to thrive and kind of build giant businesses that leverage essentially crypto rails, but don't necessarily create a crypto focused experience. Right? The value, and I'll give an example, and sorry for the long monologue of an answer, but the value here is that Uniswap as a value provider should exist regardless of whether you have a wallet or you don't. Right? It should just be a way for you to convert thing A to thing B in an extremely market efficient way. Right? Or some real world asset providers that allow you to buy T-bills, that allow you to buy energy related things, that allow you to buy real estate, should just allow you to do that and leverage crypto rails. But you should not necessarily, you the end user, should not necessarily need to know about any of this complexity, just like no one expects you to go to Amazon and know what OAuth as technology is. They just expect you to be able to click login and have things work. So that's kind of where we're spending our time. And if we're successful, that's what we'll see, is more of these businesses being enabled.
Super cool vision there. So makes a ton of sense. So I'm curious too, I guess at the beginning of this process, there's always surprises, right? Good and bad. I think I want to fixate kind of on the good surprises here, where what were maybe one or two things that once you guys got started, you realized, oh man, this is actually, this is turning out to be maybe a bigger problem than we thought, or, any category of surprise. But what would maybe one or two of those surprises be that were positive for Dynamic?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are a couple, right? The first one is, experiencing bear markets from the outside looking in previous bear markets. Folks get a sense of, hey, crypto's dead, right? So bear market in 2015, bear market in 2019, 2020. The sense from outside looking in is always, hey, crypto's dead. But one of the big and hugely positive surprises we've seen is that the amount of builder activity is growing. The amount of inbounds we get every month, the amount of cool new things that are being built is fundamentally growing, and it's growing very quickly within the crypto industry. We call this internally kind of builders are building, right? Which is this really cool surprise because, again, from the outside looking in, it feels like, hey, crypto's out of the headlines. Folks that look at crypto prices not something we focus on, but prices, fluctuate or whatever. And folks get a sense of, hey, crypto is in this like huge winter. But if you look internally, builders are actually fundamentally building. Like lots of innovations happening in the market. And that's this really cool surprise because it means, hey, in this dire of a market, there's so much activity. There's only massive upside here. And that's really, really cool. It's both really cool because we get to work with these companies every day and we get to work with founders that are building cool stuff. But it's also really cool because there's a disconnect between the narrative and what we're seeing from kind of, being inside and seeing some of these really cool things being built. So that is kind of fundamental surprise number one. Surprise number two is the sheer size of the market. We are getting more and more bullish on the fact that we think everything turns into a wallet in 5 years. We thought it will take 10. We now think it'll take 5. You can see anywhere from the Visas of the world to the Nikes of the world, double down to I think Fidelity had articles about Bitcoin, double down on everything crypto, because there's this really interesting understanding of, hey, shared rails are actually fundamentally better for the industry and they can create a bunch of this innovation. So the second positive surprise for us was how wide of a breadth crypto has and how ingrained it is going to be in our day-to-day life. And we thought it'll take longer. I actually think it'll take a shorter period of time. I think if folks open their phone in 5 years and click on any app, it will have a crypto component to it. It won't necessarily look like crypto. You won't necessarily know it's crypto. But when you transfer money from one thing to another, when you take an asset from game A and use it on game B, it's going to have those crypto rails in the background. And the speed in which that is being adopted is accelerating. And that was a huge second surprise to us. Just the sheer potential breadth of this market, of everything becoming a crypto wallet.
Love it. Okay. Very cool. So making a quick transition here, kind of on the way towards maybe zooming out and talking about the space a little bit, but you had recently tweeted counterfactual addresses is one of the coolest concepts in AA wallets. And I was curious, what is a counterfactual wallet and why are you so excited about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing in the market, so taking half a step back, I think one fascinating discussion that's happening now is the discussion around embedded wallets, right? Meaning you go into a website, you log in with your email, your social, or your phone number, social media profile, so your Google or Facebook, and you create an account. And that account can be a wallet, right? Through that experience, you might add a second factor like a passkey, like a Face ID or a Touch ID. But essentially, you have logged in through a full kind of Web2 experience, and you got a wallet on the other side of that, right? You have completely abstracted away crypto. And one fundamental and super interesting discussion that's happening now is what is the right technology stack to create that experience? And we're seeing folks kind of consolidate into this really interesting technology stack, which is passkeys, meaning Face ID or Touch ID, that Google and Apple are pushing really hard. But then an additional layer, which is an account abstraction layer, which turned that wallet that was created in the background into this really smart wallet, into a wallet that lets you add rules, meaning, hey, if this is coming back to the Venmo example that we had, this person that logs in can automatically transfer up to $100 to a friend, but over $100, they need to explicitly sign. Or I'm creating a game and I want to sponsor the gas fees of the blockchain while they play. So all these experiences are created by the second part of that. What we're seeing is the ideal stack, which is the passkey account abstraction stack. So they're created by the account abstraction stack. What's called, on the more technical side for listeners, is the ERC 4337. So the ability for you to create account abstraction. The account abstraction, and I'm getting a little bit more technical here, but account abstraction is essentially turning your wallet, the embedded wallet that you created, into this smart wallet with all those rules that we talked about. But it costs money because you have to deploy it on the blockchain and you have to pay gas to deploy it. And then it comes back to economics. I have a free user. They just signed up to my account. How much money do I spend to acquire that user, right? So it comes back to any Web2 company, lifetime value, customer acquisition cost. And deploying that smart account costs money. Now, all that was a prerequisite to explaining counterfactual addresses. Counterfactual addresses are this really cool concept which let you get a wallet address for a user, while still not paying that gas fee, while still not deploying that contract on chain. So essentially, it defers your customer acquisition cost as a developer, as a website, until later in the process. So what that actually means to a customer is you go into a website, you log in with your email or your social media account, you create your account, you can start getting things sent to your account, to your wallet, but only when you want to pull something out and quote unquote sign a transaction, you essentially pay a gas fee, or the website pays a gas fee. So that's what counterfactual addresses are. They're ways for you to start interacting with your wallet before you actually have to deploy it and pay a bunch of gas fees, etc. It's this really cool concept. There's both a really cool mathematical concept, but it's even more cool in the sense that it lets you create experiences with lower customer acquisition costs, which is a critical concept in any business.
Very cool. Okay. That makes a ton of sense. So I'm curious, what do you think crypto is getting right in 2023? And where do you think we could be doing things a little bit better? Kind of granted, we're in this kind of crazy market and still kind of dealing with the consequences of last year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple things. I'll talk specifically about embedded wallets, which I think is where a lot of innovation is happening, but then I'll mention a kind of a more broad point. Specifically, crypto has swung from one side to another very quickly. And what I mean is it swung from the concept of I have a single account, my MetaMask, and I use that across all services. And the name of the game is getting me set up with the single account. And then I can access my Uniswap and my OpenSea and so forth and so forth. That has swung very quickly over the last year to the opposite, which is I am a website. I just want people to log in. I'm going to create a website bound wallet. And folks don't need to know about MetaMask. They don't need to know about Coinbase Wallet. They just interact with my site. On the one hand, it simplifies onboarding. On the other, it kind of ruins the magic of crypto, which is, you can log in everywhere with a single account. You can essentially do single sign-on. And so that swing has probably gone too far from one direction to too far the other direction, that pendulum. And what we'll see, I think, over the next year or so is hopefully a little bit of a pendulum swing back, which is, okay, I've created an account and embedded wallet on the site. How do I use it across sites? So that pendulum swing moved from one extreme very quickly as kind of crypto went into a bear market and everyone said we need to increase the number of customers we have by bringing in Web2 users, to the complete other side. And now it's going to swing back a little bit to be a little bit more aligned with the overall crypto vision. So that is one thing that I think crypto has, not 100% got right over the last year, that I think everyone will course correct. And that's fine. It's part of innovation, right? The second thing, and I think we're getting better at this, is, and this is more of a general point, I'm a huge fan of the tech side of crypto. But the money side of crypto, less so. There's a lot of kind of talk that happened in 2021 and 2022 about prices of things. And that I get it. It's an interesting concept as an asset class, but that's not where the crypto innovation is. The crypto innovation is around shared rails, around the ability to kind of share financial rails, share identity rails, share social rails with things like Farcaster and Lens. That's the innovation, right? And I think it will serve the industry well to talk more and almost exclusively about that side versus the prices go up, prices go down side of the business and the asset class side of the business. I think that is the fundamental. The technology side of crypto is so interesting. It creates so much opportunity for rethinking how we do things. I hope that the industry, and I think one thing we've historically gotten wrong is talking a little bit too much about the first side and a little bit too little about the second side, which is the technology side of crypto, where we get an incredible amount of really cool technologies, of very sophisticated math-related technologies like zero-knowledge proofs, and multi-party computation. That's the interesting side of crypto. I really hope that more and more folks both talk and cover that side.
Love it. I'm in total agreement with you. So maybe a couple last questions here for you. First question would be, what advice would you maybe want to impart to someone who's brand new to the space as a founder? Something, maybe one or two things that you feel like are kind of your hardest won wisdom. What would you want to impart in that kind of conversation?
Yeah, I would say the following, which is, and for any founder listening, please discount what I say, because as a founder, I've learned that founders in general are usually wrong. Everyone's usually wrong. No one can predict the future. So my advice, take it with a grain of salt. It is advice that of the thing I learned, and it might not be relevant for you, dear founder listening. With that said, what I think the one advice I would say is business fundamentals are business fundamentals, whether they're in Web3 or Web2. At the end of the day, your job as a founder is to create a business that delivers value for customers and in turn delivers values for your employees and for your investors. And that means thinking about business models that make sense, can pass regulatory scrutiny, and can deliver value is critical. And that's not a Web3 specific thing. Always start with, what is the value I'm delivering my customer? Can I generate money from that? And can I build that into a big company? And so I personally believe that businesses, especially B2B businesses, should be in the business of generating money and revenue, because that makes everything a little bit easier. And so that is the one advice I would give founders is, as you start a company in Web3, do not for a second think that regular business rules of kind of business logic and fundamentals don't apply to you. At the end of the day, you still need to build a company that generates money, that creates value for its customers, and everything else follows. That's my one advice. Make sure you don't forget that. Make sure you focus on that, and make sure you solve a painful enough problem for someone to be willing to pay you money.
Love
You
it.
never know. I will say this is, when you give something away for free, you never know whether you solved a big enough pain point.
Yep. Great advice. Okay, Itai, what is your team working on right now, and what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey or maybe get involved themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, we have a very active Slack community. So everyone should go to dynamic.xyz/Slack and check it out and ask questions. The team is focusing a lot of its time today on what I described earlier as what we think is the ideal kind of wallet abstraction stack, which is passkeys plus account abstraction, and letting folks just create accounts and interact with crypto rails in the background. You can go to our Twitter account. You can follow me on Farcaster. Again, these are all shameless plugs. You can check out dynamic.xyz, our docs or our changelog to see the latest. We also have a very active blog post. But in general, I will end with this, which is, if you wake up in the morning and say, I want to assign a few of my engineers to rebuild authentication, you're probably misusing your time. That's not a good use of your time. Please offload that to folks like Dynamic or others. There are great companies in the space that can abstract that away for you so you can focus on the key parts of your business. And those are the things we're working on. Those are the things we'll spend the next couple of months, is figuring out all these experiences that have not been fully baked yet, and enabling hopefully new kinds of businesses that could not have existed before.
Amazing. Itai, thank you so much for the time. Super interesting to chat with you and hear everything you guys are working on. And I'm excited to follow along on the journey myself. So have a great start to your week here, and take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Take care.